Okay, you guys, let's talk about what's really going on with Manova because at this point, the story is not just our baby had seizures, it's way deeper than that. And the more you watch the clips, the more you listen to what Drew and Stephanie are saying and not saying, the harder it is to pretend that this all came from nowhere. We finally got that little update from Drew, right? He comes on camera like, hey guys, I know it's been a couple of days since I gave you an update. Things have kind of slowed down. I've been busy with work and making sure Manova's okay. She hasn't had a seizure in about 5 or 6 days. We took her to the hospital a few times for extensive testing, and now the top doctor or nurse is looking over everything and will get back to us as soon as she can.
Hey guys, I know it's been a couple days since I got to give you guys an update. Everything's kind of slowed down a bit. I've also been very busy with work and making sure Manova's been okay. She hasn't had a seizure in 5 to 6 days now, I think it is. We took her to the hospital quite a few times to get some extensive testing done, and the top doctor, nurse, whatever, I don't know what the position is called, is looking over all of the testing and will get back to us as soon as she can.
So that's the official version from him. It sounds calm, it sounds responsible on the surface. It sounds like, relax guys, we're handling it. We're waiting for answers. And if you only listen to that clip, if you ignore everything else we've seen over months, you could almost believe this was some random medical scare that just surprised them out of nowhere. But the thing is, we've all been here the whole time. We've seen the motel, we've seen the way they live, we've seen the changes in Manova's body, slowly, quietly in the background of all the lives and vlogs and chaos. And once you put those pieces next to Drew's little update, it stops feeling like a mystery and starts looking a lot more like consequences. So, this video is not to diagnose Manova. We're not doctors. We don't have her test results and we're not pretending we do. But when you put your child's seizures on the internet, when you film them in hospital beds, when you ask people for prayers and views and attention, people are allowed to ask questions. People are allowed to say, hey, something in this picture doesn't add up. Today we're going to talk about what we're actually seeing in Manova's body. What another creator pointed out with rickets and vitamin D, what rickets even is in simple language, and how all of this can tie back to the seizures they keep talking about while acting like they have no idea why it's happening. Let us start with the most basic thing, what we can physically see on camera. In Stephanie's recent videos where she's so excited to show that Manova is walking again after the seizure scare, it's not just, yay, she's walking. When you pay attention to her legs, the way her knees line up with her feet, the way her ankles look, something feels off. When Manova stands up and tries to push her body forward, her little knees don't stay in a straight line with her lower legs. You can see them kind of slanting one way while the rest of the leg and the foot are going another way. Like her legs are starting to curve under the pressure of her own weight. Her legs don't look like typical toddler wobble, they look like they're bending. In other clips that were shared before, when Stephanie is just carrying her around or when Manova is sitting on her lap, you can see the same pattern. One knee points in, the lower part of the leg fans out, and it looks like a bowing shape. Add to that the way her ankles and wrists look a little thick and rounded, almost like there's a small ball right above the joint, and people are not crazy for saying this looks like more than just regular baby chubbiness. And we need to say this clearly, no one with sense is making fun of Manova's butt. This is not about calling a baby ugly or weird. This is about people who have seen many children grow, who have seen normal bowing that happens in some toddlers, and who are now saying this progression plus everything else going on is concerning. So when you line up the bowing leg, thickened joints, the delayed and then suddenly pushed walking, and you lay that over a seizure story, it's not shocking the viewers are connecting it to something bigger. Now let's quickly acknowledge where a lot of this started. Another creator went and pulled up medical diagrams and articles on childhood rickets and vitamin D deficiency. She showed that classic drawing of a child with rickets, bowed legs, unusual curve of the spine, wide angles, weird changes at the wrists. She put that next to screenshots of Manova's legs and said, tell me this doesn't look similar. She also showed symptom list from health sites: bowed legs, delayed growth, poor posture, rib and chest abnormalities, muscle weakness, seizures, bone pain, all of that.
Ever since Stephanie's latest video showing Momo walking, coupled with the different videos where she's shown just Momo's legs in general, it's got me thinking more about those so-called seizures. I've been noticing within the last couple of months that Momo's legs have seemingly started to become more and more bowed, especially when she goes to stand and push up and now going into her actually like walking. I noticed that when she shows Momo, you can clearly see some bowing going on in her legs. This is not just typical of the everyday child. Again, you see her sitting with Stephanie, her knee is going one way and her leg is going another. And again, the C. And this is not making fun of Momo. This is a general medical observation. Now couple that with the fact that if you look at her arm, you can notice that at her wrist, you start seeing a little bit of a balling up of her arm. Now, if you look at somebody who has rickets, you see the same types of things start to pop up. The little bit of balling at the wrist and the bowing of the legs. Now, this can all be caused from low vitamin D, calcium, or phosphate. And we all know that Stephanie is breastfeeding. She does not eat the proper amount of calories. She does not eat anything that has any kind of proper nutrition. She's definitely not supplementing to make up for that fact. And then she's sitting there making Momo go hours and 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 hours without feeding. And we all know she's not making her good, wholesome meals to make up for that. What really got my attention was this right here. Not just the bow-leggedness, okay? This right here. What did she just say that Momo was developing out of nowhere? At the same time, she's also showing signs of this and this. In this video, she cuts it out right as Momo's knee starts to go this way as her leg is going that way, as soon as she puts full pressure on her legs. If she was truly having seizures, this to me is what would point to it.
A lot of people in the comments went, wait, that sounds exactly like what we're seeing here. So yes, that creator did important research and pushed this conversation forward. We're not taking that away from her, but for this video, we're not just repeating her points. We're taking that information as a starting point and building our own breakdown. In simple words, in a calm tone, and in a way that makes sense, even if you have never heard the word rickets before. Because the goal here is not to sound smart. The goal is to protect a child and to help people understand what may be happening, so they're not gaslit into believing this is all just random bad luck. So what is ricket? Let's make this as simple as possible. Imagine bonds are supposed to be like strong, finished bricks in a wall. For that wall to stand, you need enough bricks, and you need strong cement holding everything together. In a child's body, the bricks are minerals like calcium and phosphate, and the cement, the thing that helps those bricks actually get into the bonds, is vitamin D. When a child doesn't get enough vitamin D and sometimes not enough calcium or phosphate either, their bonds don't get built properly. The bonds stay softer than they should be. They bend instead of staying straight. They can't carry the child's weight in a normal way. That soft bone problem is what we call rickets. When rickets starts to show, doctors often see legs that bow outwards or curve when the child stands or walks, wrists and ankles that look wide and thick with little bumps around the joints, weak muscles so the child might be slow to crawl, slow to pull up, slow to work, spine that might curve strangely, later on, teeth that arrive late or have problems. And here's the really important part. If vitamin D and calcium levels drop very low in the blood, it can affect more than just bones. It can mess with the way nerves and the brain work. In some babies, that leads to something called hypocalcemic seizures, basically seizures triggered by low calcium. So if you put that together in one sentence, it looks like this. When a child doesn't get enough vitamin D and minerals for a long time, their bones can become soft and bowed, and in bad cases, their body can react with seizures. Keep that in your mind as we move forward. Soft bones, bowed legs, weak muscles, and sometimes seizures, all from long-term lack of vitamin D and calcium. Now we put the medical picture aside and look at Manova's real daily life, the one her parents have been showing on social media. This is a child who has basically lived her entire short life inside a small motel-style room. We've seen those walls over and over again. We've seen the same doctor, the same bedside, the same dim lighting. Most of the footage they show us is inside. They don't show regular outings to the park. They don't show daily walks in the sun. They don't show her playing outside, exploring grass, or just sitting in a stroller under daylight. We know vitamin D is sometimes called the sunshine vitamin because the body makes it when sunlight hits the skin. If there is a very little sunlight and there are no proper supplements, vitamin D can drop. It's that simple. On top of that, we know Stephanie has talked a lot about breastfeeding. She loves to say how attached Manova is, how often she nurses, and she also shows a lifestyle where her own eating is all over the place. There are days where she barely eats real food, where there is no sign of balanced meals with fruits, vegetable protein, and healthy fat. There's a lot of stress, a lot of drama, a lot of chaos, but not a lot of consistent nutrition. Here is the key part. Breast milk alone normally does not provide enough vitamin D for a baby, especially if the mother herself is low in vitamin D or not eating well. That is why many doctors recommend that breastfed babies get daily vitamin D drops. If that does not happen and the baby also doesn't get enough sun, the risk of rickets and deficiency goes way up. So now, look at the full picture. Baby lives mostly indoors in cramped motel. Mother shows clear signs of poor and irregular eating habits. Baby's breastfed with no clear sign of consistent vitamin D supplementation. Baby is sometimes kept waiting long periods of feeds. Baby's legs and joints on camera start to look bowed and thickened. When you line all that up, this doesn't look like some random could happen to anyone situation. It looks like textbook risk factor for vitamin D deficiency and rickets. Now let's connect the dots between rickets style changes and the seizures Drew and Stephanie kept talking about. When a child has been low on vitamin D for a long time, their body struggles to keep enough calcium in the blood. Calcium isn't just about bones, it's also about how muscles contract, how nerves fire, and how the brain sends signals. If calcium drops too low, the brain can start firing in a very unsteady, chaotic way. One of the serious things that can happen then is seizures. Doctors have seen this pattern many times. There are cases where babies were brought to the hospital because they had seizures, and when doctors checked, they found super low vitamin D, low calcium, and bone changes that matched rickets. The seizures were basically the body screaming something is terribly wrong after months of quiet deficiency. So when Drew says Manova had seizures, we took her to the hospital, they did tests, she hasn't had one in 5 or 6 days while we wait on a top doctor to review everything. That sounds scary and mysterious on its own. But when you add bowed legs, thickened wrists and ankles, weak looking muscles, almost no sunlight, poor maternal nutrition, breastfeeding without visible supplements, suddenly the seizures don't look so mysterious anymore. They look like they could be part of a bigger long-term problem. Again, we're not saying it is definitely rickets or it is definitely vitamin D deficiency. We cannot say that without her actual lab results. But we can say that this pattern is recognized in medicine, that it's a known pathway, long-term deficiency leading to bone changes, and in bad cases, seizures. This is where a lot of people start to feel angry instead of just worried. If Stephanie and Drew were private parents, keeping everything off the internet, quietly working with doctors, no one would be here dissecting anything. We wouldn't know, and honestly, we wouldn't even need to know. But they are not private parents. They are public figures who continuously film, post, and monetize their child. They filmed hospital visits, they shared updates about seizures, they asked for prayers and attention, they made this a storyline. So when the same people who invited the internet into their child's medical crisis turn around and act annoyed, act defensive, or act like viewers are crazy for asking questions about obvious risk factors, it feels manipulative. Drew's update is a perfect example. He says he has been busy with work and taking care of Manova, things have slowed down and she hasn't had a seizure for days, and now a top doctor is reviewing the tests. All very calm, all very vague. No word on what kind of tests, no word on whether vitamin D and calcium were checked, no word on whether doctors mentioned bone changes. Just, we'll let you know when we know. Meanwhile, viewers have been watching that child's legs bow more and more in every new clip. They've watched her be dragged around a dark motel room, watched her stay up late, watched her be used as a prop in lives and videos, and when they ask, could this be rickets? Could this be vitamin D deficiency? They're treated like haters. It's like inviting everyone to a fire, then yelling at them for asking why the smoke alarms went off. No one is saying that every seizure is preventable or that parents are evil or if their child gets sick, they are evil. Kids get sick in the best homes. Things happen, but in this case, the lifestyle risk factors are not even hidden. They've been on camera for months. So, we have no idea what's going on act might work for someone who just tuned in yesterday, but for people who have been watching, it feels like another layer of denial. To stay fair, let's say this clearly. Seizures in babies can come from many different causes. They can be from genetic conditions, they can come from infections, high fevers, or brain injuries. They can be from other metabolic problems or from something totally separate from vitamin D. That is why doctors don't just look at the legs and say, oh, that's it. They run blood tests, they might do scans, they check everything. So we have to leave room for the possibility that something else is going on with Manova. But And this is a big bet. Even if the final diagnosis ends up being something completely different, that does not erase the reality of her environment. We still have a child who rarely seems to leave a small enclosed room, parents who show a pattern of poor nutrition and long gaps between feeds, visible changes in her legs and joints that look concerning, constant filming and stress instead of calm, stable routines. Whatever the final label on the hospital paperwork says, the environment is not supportive. It does not look like a place where a child's health is put first and content second. And that's a problem all on its own. And with or without the rickets diagnosis, no one is expecting perfect parents. There is no such thing. But there is a big difference between making mistakes and refusing to change when a child's health is at stake. A responsible response to Manova's seizure and visible body changes would look more like this: clear communication that doctors are checking her vitamin D, calcium, and other levels, honest talk about getting her outside more, finding safer housing, or at least creating a healthier routine for her, being open about using supplements if they are needed, taking a break from lives and daily filming to actually focus on her without cameras, accepting that viewers saw warning signs and instead of attacking them, thanking them for caring. Even if Stephanie and Drew wanted to keep some details private, which is fair, which is their right, the general tone would be different. It would be humble. It would be focused on action, not just vibes. It would be full of, we are changing things, instead of, we are waiting and don't know anything yet, but please keep watching. Instead, it feels like the pattern is repeating: deflect, deny, blame, haters, post more content, and hope people forget. So, as we wait for whatever update they decide to give next, remember this: it is not cruel to ask questions when a baby who lives in a motel with very little sun and very questionable nutrition suddenly has seizures and visible bone changes. It is not hating to say, hey, this looks like something doctors warn about all the time. The cruel thing would be to see all of this, say nothing, and pretend that the only story here is poor influences with a sick baby, when the real conversation should be, what choices brought us here and what needs to change so it doesn't get worse. That's where I'm at with this. Worried for Manova, critical of her parents, and honestly just hoping that somewhere in all these hospital visits and tests results, somebody is talking seriously about sunlight, vitamin D, calcium, proper food, and a lifestyle that actually supports a healthy little body instead of slowly breaking it on camera.